And I think we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mark Rodriguez, and I have a very special guest for us to kind of chat with today. His name is Eric Outcalt, and I'm going to bring him on in just a second. Um, let's see, definitely live. Gosh, it's been a minute since I've done one of these, actually doing an interview. So I'm just gonna, without any further ado, bring Eric on right now. And to introduce Eric, Eric Outcalt, I met him at an automotive at a dealership out in Great Neck a few years ago, and I was brought in to do some consulting. And I have been in hundreds of stores in my automotive tenure since the early to mid late 90s. And every so often you meet someone who you're really impressed by communication skills with not just customers but his staff, and the guy's a true leader. So I'm going to shut up and kind of try to lead this conversation about getting to know Eric just a bit and kind of introduce him to you. And without further ado, Eric, thank you so much for coming on today, brother. How are you today?
Absolutely magnificent. Thanks, Mark. A better introduction than I don't think I could have put together for myself, frankly. And thank you for your putting yourself out there like this. I have to tell you, bravery lives within every cell of your being, because it takes a lot to put yourself in front of people, doing your thing, with no looking back and no regrets. I've been watching you do this now and get better at it over the last couple of years, and I have to tell you, you're a role model for me. And so here I am. When you gave me the opportunity, I said, you know what, if this guy can do it, let's see.
Yeah, well, there's definitely something to be said for getting that message out there. And these are certainly unprecedented times. These are the times the likes of which I've never experienced in my lifetime.
No.
And the impacts that have reverberated through not just the health side of it, Eric, but the business side, from just the shortages in different markets and how people are just being impacted. I've got twin daughters, and I feel very lucky. Mine are 30 years old now, but I can't fathom, what it must be like to be a parent of a preschooler, or heck, anyone from grades kindergarten up through high school, where, if you think about children in their formative years, everything is stimulus and response. It's a visual response.
Yep.
So when you've got these kids who can't see each other smile, they everything is feedback, right? So a child in school, determining whether or not they've done the right thing or they're getting approval, can't even see a teacher smile or I don't know. I didn't mean to go off on this tangent, but maybe you could speak to that.
It's so true. I mean, even in what we do, we can sense a customer's body language. We look if they're leaning in, we look if they're leaning back, if their gaze is focused on the page, if it's looking in our eyes. You can get a sense. The vibration of a human being is so strong that if you're not in the proximity of that individual and have not set up that relationship, how do you possibly gauge what's happening? So I fear for the future generations and their ability just to communicate, on the level that we were taught. It's going to be an interesting ride going forward, coming out of this and watching these kids who have been deprived of a year or two of that interaction and how things progress. But I am hopeful. I remember my mom listening to my 70s inspired rock and roll and shaking her head and saying, "What happened to Mahalia Jackson?" And now that's the stuff they play in elevators. So human beings are resilient. I have all the faith in the world in not only our country, but our spirit and the smart people that are running around holding this whole thing together. And we're going to come through it. And we're going to come through it better than before. Didn't kill us 100 years ago. What's it going to do to us now? Nothing. This is going to be a look in the rearview mirror and a lesson learned in just a minute. So, good news.
You see, guys. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this is the reason why I wanted to get this guy on Alive with us. So, Eric, please tell us, who are you, and give us a little snapshot into who you are, what you've been through, just a little bit of who Eric is.
Strangely enough, I'm just a kid from the projects. I grew up in Astoria, Queens, to working class parents. My parents split when I was very young. I was raised by my grandmother, my great grandmother, and my mother in a Southern tradition. So yes, ma'am, and getting up and getting out of the way for a woman who needed to sit down on a bus wasn't even an option. It was a command, and if not, a backhand lick. So I believe I was raised right. And I was a pretty bright kid. I got out of high school when I was 16, and I had a 4-year degree in marketing in 1981 at a Pace University when I was 19. So my dad said, who was a mechanic at the time, he said, let's go shopping and buy you a new car, because you're the only kid from your generation that even think about college, let alone finish. So we went up and down Northern Boulevard, and I'll never forget. We walked into Paragon, AMC, Jeep, Renault, Peugeot, Honda, Oldsmobile back in the day. And
Going back.
Look at a Honda for me. And all the sales guys had their feet up on the desk. They were wearing 3-piece suits, pinky rings. And the guys who were making real money, you could tell, were the Oldsmobile guys back then. But when they got to go to lunch, they hopped in a car and they had a dealer plate on it. And they went away. This can't be so bad. But back then, you couldn't just get in. You needed to know someone, or you needed to start at the absolute bottom. So I applied to this dealership 4 or 5 times. And long story short is they gave me a shot to sell American Motors product. And my advertising plans for myself ended. I ended up doing pretty well. I enjoyed the business. They gave me a company car at 19, a 1981 AMC Spirit. I was tooling around with, and the insurance was paid, and I was making money, and I never looked back. 35 years later,
Wow.
The car business afforded me a very good living, and if I didn't like it, I wouldn't allow my kid to get in it. My son's running a dealership now, so I'm very proud of being able to make a good, if not better than good, living with nothing more than a promise and a pen and some good old New York chutzpah and the desire to make it happen. And being now in a position to be able to help people do that is the bright shining star on the hill for me. Being able to put people together with an idea that they want to do something with their lives and show them a path and make that happen is what gives me the juice today.
Well, I'll tell you, the way it's funny how we met. The dealer you were working for at the time brought me in to do consulting for the store, for the sales staff and the BDC.
Yep.
And I will tell you, I was taken by the commitment that the dealer had to just making the investment in personal development for the staff. I think he sent a good number of people to the Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within event. And I was very, very impressed with that. Really, really impressed. I mean, not just that it was Tony Robbins, but just that, here's a progressive thinking dealer who really understands that it's more than just automotive selling strategies. It's more than just closing techniques. It's if you teach the person how to develop themselves, work on their mindset, work on their compelling reasons why they're doing what they're doing and who they're ultimately serving in the long run. It is everything. It absolutely. So I was blown away. I was taken back by this commitment that you guys had. And then I watched it. Eric, I was the first thing I was taken by was your size. I mean, you're a pretty big guy, and I'm like, wow, this guy must work out, every single day. I mean, it's tough to tell on a Facebook Live, but and I don't know how old you are, Eric, but gosh, you could tell
I
that
had my
you,
60th birthday in August. It was good. It was a good birthday. Yeah, it was a good birthday.
but you could tell that you've had a lifelong commitment towards improving yourself on the health side,
Yeah.
for sure. And I watched you the way you communicated with your sales staff, and it was more of a mentorship. It was more of a team. It was a very deep sense of teamwork. It wasn't that you didn't come across with an air of being better than anyone. It wasn't a Gestapo type of management style, but I would say that you brought out the best in your people, and that was apparent by I remember very clearly walking to the F&I office and I saw the messages on the board, your trainings, and it was more about building up the person, building up that person before trying to close a deal, closing yourself on the number one sale you'll ever make, which is to you first. So
Absolutely.
maybe you could talk about some of the experiences you've had with your sales staff. I mean, gosh, you've been doing this a long time,
Yeah.
and here's the reality, Eric. A guy doing this from the '80s, you typically you don't see a guy like that flash forward into 2021, you know, um, with this renewed sense of vigor and desire to bring out the best in people. I've been in the automotive business now since the early '90s, and I've worked at a number of stores where that Saturday morning meeting was they were kicking your head in. It was not a motivating meeting at all. So maybe you could speak about your training style and what influenced you to go down that road.
Well, three things. One, I never enjoyed those Saturday morning meetings, and goodness knows I've been a party to more than I care to admit. But after leaving them, I would always try to reassess and wonder, so the point of this on Saturday, which is supposed to be my biggest day, is what? Because now I don't feel very big. I feel kind of small. And I feel as though, even though I may not have given 100% of my best effort, I feel as though now, even if I found it in me to give 100% of my best effort, that would also not be appreciated. So I realized early on when I became a manager that people work for much more than money. My
Mm,
goodness, that money is so far down the list of reasons people get up in the morning. I'm going to share this with you, Mark, in case you're not aware. There
mhm,
are hundreds of dealerships within driving distance of every single salesperson that we encounter every day.
right,
And there's no reason in the world why they need to stay in your store other than the reasons you give them. And if you give them reasons to go looking, they will. There's a
right.
reason the turnover is so high in our business, I believe. A, inadequate training, and then B, an inadequate management staff, or a management staff that tends not to treat people as resources. There's a reason they call human resources the human resources department. Because without people, you could have the most beautiful mausoleum and fill it with the most technologically advanced cars on the planet. They will never sell themselves. They just won't. Right?
That's
So
so
we
true.
need our people who are representing these multi tens of $1,000s of product to be well educated. They need to be able to communicate the benefits of buying this car from you, from this dealership, and they also need to feel as though they are appreciated. Because to make $100,000 in our business today is relatively common, right? And it can be done in relatively almost any dealership that you halfway apply yourself, so you don't want to go losing people. And so once I realized that, and I thought maybe there's a better way. Once we've taught the 10 steps and people understand the basics and closing skills are pretty good, now let's work on the person. And if I give them a reason to keep showing up on a Saturday morning, that they're going to get something more than a beat up session or
Right.
more than just talking about the numbers and how terrible or how good they are, right? Let's
Yeah.
go beyond the business. And now let's talk about you as a human being, because I care for you as a human being, working with me as a human being to accomplish a common goal more than I do about this particular sale. You're more important than this particular customer in front of me. Having you get better on a daily basis is going to make me better, the store better, your pocket better, your family better. And I care about that. Once people believe that, they'll run through a wall for you. Absolutely take a bullet for you. I've seen it. I know it. I've lived it. You know? And that's kind of my philosophy.
Well, that's great. I mean, if well, if I was to go back in time to when I first started selling cars, um, number one, I had no idea. I didn't get into the car business to because of this goal I had to just sell cars. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, and this was not on the list of occupations, that they had in mind for me. And I got into the car business out of necessity. I became a father, and the degree that I graduated college with really wasn't serving. It just didn't do much with it at all, and it was out of necessity. And back then, a lot of people were getting into the business. I mean, you mentioned at the age of 19, you had a demo.
Mm.
Well, those days are over, right? The demo days are over, especially unless you're a manager or a higher level manager. And back then, we call those the golden handcuffs of the car industry, right? Kind of prevented us from moving out of the car business.
Yeah.
When we look at from back then till now, it's still a people business, right? You're still selling yourself. You got to know your product. You've got to be very good at building, maintaining, and sustaining your growing book of business. There are so many different skill sets you need to know: how to prospect, how to ask for referrals, how to organize your time, how to get that balance with family. Because you know, uh, listen, there's a lot of salespeople out there who are in broken homes because they kind of climbed that ladder and they wanted to become a GSM, become a GM, and lost track of the fact that, well, wait a second, I'm here for 10 hours or 8 hours. Well, gosh, you know what? Let me pick up the phone at least and say, hey, honey, I'm thinking about you. I miss you. Um, I know in my life, I was on this track, to just wanting to excel and excel and excel. And I lost track of that balance. So while it would appear that the number one reason why people get into the business is because they hear you can make a lot of money, the flip side is a top reason why people leave is because they're not making enough money, right? And that's training. That's they got involved with a dealership that didn't look to build the person first and look to build a soldier, right? And developing that why, that empowering why, what would you do with the extra money? Because if you don't know what you do with the money, then on those days when you've got an 8-hour day, and if at least 40% of your time is not spent belly to belly with someone, you're basically out of business. If you're not aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll treat your business casually and you'll become a casualty. That's why there's so many people that jump out of the business in the first year. To that end, here we are in the pandemic, and for those salespeople who are getting into the business now, or who got into it during the pandemic, they have no clue. They have no understanding of just how difficult it could be. And I say that from the perspective of, customers they've never had more information available to them than they do today. The landscape changed with the internet like years ago. And so now there are salespeople out there who are making really big commissions as a result of the chip shortages and the vehicle shortages, and they're not bringing value. In other words, I was in one store where, I kid you not, I witnessed a salesperson say, "Well, congratulations on your new vehicle. I have another customer waiting. If you want to figure out how to work your vehicle, just go on YouTube." I mean, not even a proper delivery, you know. So I think there's going to be a number of salespeople who are going to be in for a rude awakening when the inventory does come back. And those dealers who, I'm very fortunate, I work for a dealer group that took the approach: we're not going to gouge our customers. Right? We're gonna nurture our database, and we're gonna make a fair profit, but we're gonna be transparent, we're gonna be efficient, and we're gonna treat these people with respect.
Hmm.
Dealerships like that, they will be around for a while. They'll
Correct.
survive this. But guys like you and me out there now who have done this for a while, who looking back, understand the value proposition of building up the person.
Mhm.
Um, you know, you and I both have the same 24 hours, right? So it's a question of, what are your priorities? What are your values? I know for you, health is a big value for you. I know that because we've spoken about that.
Yep.
And not to shift gears, but this has been a crazy time with COVID. I'd love to find, how have you kept what's been your health strategies throughout, and your mindset strategies that kept you propelling you forward during COVID?
Well, so much I've found in my life of what we are. We're a sum total of our habits, right?
Yeah.
So I realized that in order to maintain the level of energy you need to run a dealership and maintain a balance in life, you absolutely have to develop habits that you can perform without thinking, because so many times there are so few minutes in the day for yourself, you really can't think about what comes next. You just have to go ahead and do it. I developed a habit of getting up earlier than any of my competitors, and getting my gym time in the morning. Gave me three things. One, gave me a sense that I accomplished something for me, so that if I had to spend the next 12 hours in a dealership for someone else, I at least took time for Eric, and I never felt deprived. Number one. Number two, gave me an additional source of energy. For whatever reason, if I work out in the morning, I'm energetic for the entire day. If I miss a morning workout, it changes the pace of my entire day. That's me. That's what I've grown accustomed to. And then third, and probably the most important thing, that workout in the morning goes ahead and allows me now to take some poetic license when it comes to my diet during the day, which we all know is hard to maintain if you're sitting in a car dealership and it's now 2 o'clock and you look up and you haven't eaten.
Love the
And
way you
so
put that.
you say,
You
all
take
right.
poetic license. I
Sure,
love
poetic
that.
license. Yeah, exactly. So um, it worked out for me. So I developed a habit of getting up and going to the gym every day. And so if you spend that time, you don't necessarily want to blow it on a cookie, because you've just put in 2 hours in the morning, and it just changes the things around for you. But now COVID comes, gyms shut down, and everything's shutting down, and you can barely walk out in the street without having a mask up and glove up and wrap yourself in cellophane. So my fiance and I, who's she's a chiropractor and a health and wellness coach, we made some decisions about how we were going to navigate through it. We worked
Mhm.
out together. We never do, but we did during those times. We'd get up in the morning and we'd either do a walk or a run. Then we'd go back to her place and we'd do workouts at home. And those are some of the toughest workouts I've ever been through. She's an animal. But the fact of the matter is, we tried not to break a good habit. They're very hard to form, very, very hard to form. So we maintained a semblance of a good habit for 90 days or so, until our gyms reopened and we were able to get back on track. But I believe, to bring the whole thing full circle, that it's all about habits that you're able to form. And so part of what I teach people I'm mentoring, what I've trained my son to do, just form good habits, man. They'll carry you through when you think you have nothing left in the tank. If it's a habit and you owe it to yourself, you'll do it. And the other thing you really have to do is raise your standards. If your standard is, I know that I should, but I will, and you'll make an excuse, that doesn't cut it. You really have to make a decision, burn the boats, and raise your standard just a little bit. Even if you do it 1% a day, what do they say at the end of the year, Mark? 365% increase, right? That's it.
Absolutely. I'm going to circle back to Ernest's comment in just a second, but I just want to see if you you agree with these quotes. I'm going to put these up on the put these up here. Health is not valued until sickness comes. That's one. The other one is health is the crown on the well person's head that only the ill person can see. And those who think they have no time for exercise will sooner or later have to find time for illness. It's by Edward Stanley. We'd love to get your thoughts on those, man.
Yeah, they're all valid. I think that what people do is we tend to accept the status quo. And it's all a matter of, Bob Proctor talks about this all the time. It's a matter of paradigm. Where do we see ourselves? How do we see ourselves? Do I see myself as a person who has plenty of energy in the morning? Or do I describe myself, if somebody asks me if I'm a morning person, I say absolutely not. That sets me up for never getting out of bed before 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, half an hour before I have to leave the house, what have you. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So unless we can change the way we perceive that individual that we are, we're never going to be able to change. So if we look at those quotes about health, and how people are perceived as being, as having a crown of health by someone who's looking up at us, It's not like they couldn't have it. Unless you're diagnosed with some debilitating disease like cancer, God forbid, or something, everyone has the same opportunity. Like you said, we all have 24 hours in a day. It's how we choose to spend them. So I think that health allows me, I really like my life. I dig it. I dig everything about it. I have a beautiful girlfriend. I have wonderful children. I'm in a place financially where, thank goodness, I'm not worried about where my next meal is coming from. And I want to take this and milk this bitch for the next 30 years if I can. Healthy and running around, cutting up and causing all kinds of trouble. But how am I going to be able to do it if I'm worried about the aches and pains I have to fight just to get out of bed? So I've got a different plan for myself. And I think everybody needs to really sit down and decide who they are and where they want to be in a minute, because that minute comes so quickly, you'd be amazed.
You know, Ben Newman, he's a coach who he talks a lot about living to your standards versus living to your feelings. There's a lot of people who on the last week of December said, January 1st, I'm going to start at the gym. And here we are, January 4th, and there's a number of people out there who, when that alarm clock went off, hit the snooze button. And when you hit the snooze button, you're not living to a standard. You're living to your feelings. As you mentioned, I don't feel like going. I should. I would if I could, right? But then there's something that he calls the seduction of success, meaning first couple of months. Let's say you go 6 weeks, you get some results, and it's almost like the car business, the green pea effect, right? That new salesperson that listens to you, they follow every direction, they're having massive success, and then they start to look out and go, that guy there, he's not a buyer, she's not a buyer. They start to pre-qualify, prejudge. They take less ups, they take less action, and then what happens? There's this they start to fulfill this notion that maybe the car business isn't for them because they're taking less actions, they're getting less results, and now it affects their belief.
But is that a person who's in touch with their why, Mark? Did that person go through that exercise and determine their why? Probably.
Well, listen, they absolutely not. Absolutely.
So
The seduction of success, though, is, that's what separates the person who stays on track from the one who says, you know what, I sold, let's say I sold 20 cars this month. You know what? I'm going to take the foot off. I'm going to take my foot off the gas. I made enough money. This year alone, I mean, I know some guys who they made $400,000 in automotive sales, and it's not because they've added more value.
Right.
It's gonna be interesting when this comes back to normal. I do want to ask you this. In your career, who are maybe one, two, or three of the top influential people or mentors that have kind of helped you and impacted you?
Interesting. So the first guy was the guy who taught me how to sell cars. His name was, it's an old name, and only old people will remember him, but his name was Don Rosenbaum. Old guy, trainer. When I met him, he was mid-60s. Chain smoker with a bad toupee. Horrible toupee. But he sat me in an office, and for 3 days, when I started selling cars at the American Motors dealership on the corner of Northern Boulevard and 57th Street in Woodside, Queens, he drilled me on the 10 steps, on negotiation, on how to do a pencil. And when he threw me out to the wolves and I screwed up and I came back into the office, he took my pants down and spanked me so hard, I never wanted to have that happen again. Looking back, was that an appropriate training method? Probably not.
Probably not.
But I thank him every day and God every day for having me cross paths with that man, because had I not, my life might have taken a different trajectory, and I'm really happy with the way things turned out. So him, number one. Number two, a guy who allowed me to run his store when I was only 25 years old. His name was Jack Mark, and I was running the AMC store, which now is the Chrysler store in Bayside. He hired me as an assistant sales manager, made me the sales manager, sent me away to F&I school, let me do F&I for a couple of years. Then he made me his GM at 27 years old, and was about to sell me the store until he got a cash offer under the minority program. Old guy, pipe smoker, paratrooper, no fear in his entire body. He was fearless, and a great mentor. Taught me everything I know about running a dealership from a financial perspective. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that my father wasn't probably the most influential person for me. I didn't know my father as well as I could have, I guess, because I only saw him on the weekends because my mom and dad were separated. But he picked me up every Friday night, dropped me off every Sunday night, and I spent every weekend with him for as long as I can remember. And he was an alcoholic, and he would drink and drive. I remember driving around in his Cadillac, swerving down the street. Probably should have been dead, but by the grace of God, we didn't. But this is a guy who worked hard, was always the go-to person of his 6 siblings, who never really had real jobs and kind of shuffled from place to place. And he only made, in his top year, $50,000. But he was always the go-to person if people needed a loan. He had perfect credit. He bought himself a co-op in Rego Park, and lived a good, solid life, and taught me to be a good, solid person, to never go back on my word, to be a man of honor. He was just incredible. When he passed about 8 years ago, and I'm an only child, when he passed about 8 years ago, and everything was done, and now I have to go into his apartment and start separating things and finding out what he's got and what he doesn't have. This is a guy who never made more than $50,000 a year. He left me an apartment worth $250,000 paid off. He left me a little over $100,000 in cash and an insurance policy for $200,000. So forget the money and forget that. I guess my point is, if you're able to take something, and he barely made it out of high school, he went to automotive high school and learned how to spin a wrench, and that's how he made his living his entire life. If you're able to take something that's virtually nothing and turn it into something,
Mm.
and inspire people on the way, you've left your mark. And I hope that when it's all over for me, I'm half that guy. I'm just half that guy. That's it.
Well, that's great, man. I could now I understand who Eric is and why he is the way he is. Your dad played a major role,
You did.
and that's strong. I want to take a moment and shift back to automotive, and I want to go back to what Ernest, he put a comment up there. He said, explains why a colleague of mine couldn't quote unquote make it in the car business. He wouldn't take the time to take care of the customer. He was only interested in writing the deal, then going home. Eventually fired himself when he couldn't even sell 10 units a month. And unfortunately, that story plays out just far too often. Far too often. I would love to get your perspective on, let's see here, what's a common stereotype that you had to battle regularly in automotive? And it could be from either working with salespeople or even, working with customers.
Hmm. I think that as a closer, when you've had salespeople who are working with customers on the floor, and now it's time, they've gone as far as they can, and you're running the desk, and you get a sense that okay, that they've gone as far as they can. Customers getting a little frustrated. Let's see if we can button this up. And you approach the desk. So many times, the customer's energy will change. You can feel it as you approach the desk. And sometimes they'll even verbalize it. Oh, here come the big guns. Here comes the closer. Here comes the big boss. Here comes the pressure. Whatever it is that they're expecting, it's generally not a positive outcome. It's generally not something they're relishing having done. So I think the stereotype that car salespeople are there to sell them or force them to buy or do something they didn't have an intention to do is a myth. You got up in the morning, Mr. Customer. You had to have spoken to your wife or significant other about spending $30, $40, $50,000 prior to getting here. You did your research on the internet. You had the nerve to walk into the place, sit with a salesperson, take a test drive, spend the time, and here we are. And here we are. So I'm coming over not to sell you something you don't want, not to make you spend more than you need to, but to assist you in making your purchase. And when I train and I can get a salesperson to get that paradigm shift in place, that you're not there to sell anything, you're there to help them buy what they already came for, you'd be amazed at the light of greater recognition that lights up on their head and flows through their entire body. Immediately, it's a different world for them. You're just helping the customer get what they came for. And if you do it and you do it with integrity, and if you do it well, and if you answer questions as you're going along and you answer those questions, the close should be inevitable. If we can do that more often.
Has there been a salesperson, saleswoman, or salesman who you have met who just really they shocked you in terms of their development?
Yeah.
Anything that anyone or any stories that come to mind?
Quick story.
Because I've had a few that I've come across in training.
That store that we met at, I had a young kid come in, barely got out of high school. He told me went to one semester of college, and he dropped out. He was adopted by a wealthy family in the neighborhood, but he just didn't have an aptitude for school. Bright kid, I could tell. He interviewed with me in shorts and a t-shirt one afternoon. Came in unannounced. I wasn't looking for anyone. Sat himself in front of me, had the nerve to do so, and engaged me for a 20-minute conversation.
Right.
When it was all done, I said, listen, I'll give you an assignment. Go to the store and buy this book, How to Sell Anything to Anybody by Joe Girard. Read it. If you read the book and you can come in and tell me what the book's about, I'll give you a shot. I dismissed him. Never thought I'd see him again. 3 days later, he calls me on the phone. Hey, I read the book. I want to come talk to you and tell you what it's about. To entertain myself, I went across the street. I got myself a Starbucks. I invited him in. The kid actually read the book, had questions. Wow. I answered them, and he turned out to be one of my star people in that store for about 3 years. And he was 19 years old because he had a desire, because he wanted it, and he had a why. He wanted to take care of his mom. His mom had cancer. He needed to make some money.
Wow.
Compelling.
To that end, what are some personality traits that you feel have to stand out for someone to be successful in automotive today? Like what is the stock? Like what does that person need to bring for them to just take that first step?
I think the two things: the ability to be honest with themselves as to where they start, because you need to start where you start, and you can't bring the idea that you are something that you're not. I think you have to start as nobody, no thing, nothing, from zero, and accept that. And then the second thing is you need to be tenacious. If you're going to cower at the first or second no, this is just not, it's not for you. And that I don't think, I think that can be taught to a certain extent, but that's a person, if that makes you shudder and you're going to get nightmares at night, then this is not for you. This is just,
you said something interesting earlier about, and this had to do with your morning routine, and you coming to the realization that the one thing that had to happen, you needed to develop good habits, right? These good habits, and a morning routine is so important. You also mentioned how you were cognizant of the fact that you woke up earlier to put in that time at the gym, and whether it's an hour early or how many hours did you wake up earlier every day? Or what was it, one or two? Couple hours. So most people won't take the time to do the math on that. In fact, when we spoke yesterday, you had me whip out the calculator. What would you have me do? What was that assignment you had me do?
Well,
you had me calculate the number of hours you worked a week for the number of years you worked at the dealership.
Correct.
Right. And I think it came out to like, we'll do it right now. It was it 45 hours? Let's just see here, if I remember correctly. That's 45 hours a week times, let's say 50 weeks, because you never really took a 2-week vacation, right?
No, never. But okay, 50 weeks.
So 45 times 50. That's 2,250. And how many years was this now? You were in the business?
I sold my first car January 21st, 1981. So what is that, 40 years?
40 years.
Coming up on 41.
It's 90,000 hours.
Yeah, long time.
That's a real long time. So, but here's the thing, though. Whether it's waking up an hour early to do, I don't know, whether you're putting in 20 minutes for your mindset, 20 minutes for your spirituality, 20 minutes for your physicality, it's an investment of time that over time is going to exponentially impact your life.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I think that those salespeople who want to make money, who want to be successful, and you're right, it isn't the money. In fact, for me, I will tell you the greatest gift I get is when I have a former salesperson or someone I've trained in the past who says to me, "Hey, Mark, you know what? Thank you so much. You changed my life. Now I'm this, so I'm the manager here, and man, I always remembered your words and what you said." And for me, the biggest gift is when someone pays it forward, because someone reached down and saw me at a time in my life where I had nothing. I mean, literally nothing. Came from nothing. And I was very, very lucky, very, very lucky, just to be curious,
Yeah.
to remain curious. Why do people buy the way they do? And asking better questions led me to better mentors. Tony
Absolutely.
Robbins, Paul Cummings was a real big mentor of mine. Jackie Cooper back in the day.
Get the hinge working.
Yeah, absolutely. But how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So if you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, then you become a product of your environment. But if you take the initiative and you say, well, listen, and this is why there were a lot of losers, a lot of winners during the pandemic. There were people who kind of contracted and just, got stuck in a sphere of uncertainty. And then there were others that, hey, listen, man, what can I do with this extra time? Let me read a book a week. Let me, go out there and increase my knowledge. Let me figure out, well, here's where, the crowd is going. Well, what would happen if I went this way? And so companies like Zoom and all of these, these live, programs, all the equipment, all these, I mean, there were a lot of people that won during the
Yep.
pandemic. Right.
Absolutely.
So guys like you and I who we realize the value of time. Now, this last 14, 16 months, I lost both my mother, my father, two aunts, and uncle. So I realize, especially going through COVID now during Christmas, I was alone, couldn't see my family. I realized the value of relationships. I realized the value of time and not squandering time. It's one of the reasons why I want to do more of these lives to showcase great people like yourself who have a wealth of information to share. And I'm really grateful. That's the other thing. 2022. I'm learning just to be kinder and to show more gratitude because I'm finding the more grateful I am for all that I have, the more I have basically positioned myself to receive, to be grateful for.
Absolutely. It's a
Right?
snowball effect.
It really, really is. It really is. So my goal is to leave people better than the way I find them, which you leave salespeople. In fact, in your bio, you mentioned that the places you've worked, you've left those people better than you found them before you impacted their lives. I think we
I
have a
absolutely believe
few
that. I
comments here.
absolutely believe that. And again, how do you know? Because you get those phone calls, you get those random emails, those random texts. This one kid I was telling you about, this first time he was able to put himself on a plane with his girlfriend, take her to an all expense paid Mexican vacation for a week, and get back on a plane and come back and do it. He thanked me for giving him the opportunity to be able to make enough money to be able to have the life he wants. That's it.
That's awesome.
That's a wrap.
We have a few comments. We have Dan Altmeyer. He's in my Grow Live Academy. How you doing, Dan?
Hi, Dan.
Joe Ingram. He's a genius of sorts.
Okay.
So he read your bio. He says you're a car guy. He goes, "What's a car guy?" He's like, Eric looks like a man, not a car.
Yeah, you should only know.
Joe Ingram was a good guy. We got Scott Ricard out of Florida. Got a very dear friend of mine, Mark Gassert, who is in a different type of. He does training as well.
Okay.
This guy he pounds the phones. I have no idea how many calls he makes a day, but he's constantly pounding the phones.
Wow.
Victoria here, she's awesome. Part of the Grow Live Academy. Kellen Ann, she's awesome. Just some really, really. I've been very, very blessed to meet some great people. Listen, we're at 49 minutes now. I wanted to wind this down, and I want to thank you for your time. I mean,
No, Mark,
I got
thank
your
you.
email.
This has been awesome.
Listen, I appreciate you. If anyone wants to reach out to you, I have his email address out there, eoutcalt@gmail.com. I really, really appreciate the value that you brought us today with your experience and sharing just automotive experience, your thoughts on health, your thoughts on just what it takes to be successful just in the world out there today. And I think the reality is, if I was to take the common denominator, you're a guy who's taken action. You just don't talk the talk, you walk the talk, and I really appreciate that. So I'm grateful for you. Any parting comments you want to make to the group for 2022?
Well, again, I'm humbled and grateful for this opportunity. I know I'm your first interview for 2022. I take that as a compliment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think that going forward, we just need to keep things in perspective. As I said, this pandemic, we can allow it to overwhelm us and cloud our vision and become cataracts on our eyes that cloud everything, or we can see through it and see past it. You can get through anything if you know that there's an end, and there will be an end. This is all going to expire. We're working on pills that are going to work and vaccines and all kinds of things, and human beings are resilient. So this is all going to end. What we do on the other side of it, with the lessons we've learned, I think that's what we need to start accumulating now. I think now we need to start looking at the lessons that we've learned through this so that we can go ahead and grow and just use it as a stepping stone to get better. I am warm in my heart and humbled again to have spent this time with you, Mark. This has been great. And if ever there's anything I can do for you on my side, as you've done for me this afternoon, my emotional bank account is full and ready to give back.
Wow. Eric, stand by. I want you to stay in the green room there when I say goodbye to everyone. I really appreciate you, Eric. Thank you so much. I'm going to end this broadcast. Or for everyone out there, I am absolutely humbled again to be doing these lives for you. I'm looking forward to doing more of these and showcasing some really amazing people. I want to thank you guys for spending this time with us. Make 2022 an amazing, amazing, amazing year. Thank you so much. Have a great day.